Welcome to this week's series on scripture found in Star Wars. I love Star Wars, as you can tell from my t-shirt, and you can tell from my general nerd demeanour. I just absolutely love Star Wars. A bit of information for you about the franchise. It has grossed over $10 billion US. It's the third highest grossing franchise in box office series ever. The Force Awakens, number 7 in the film series, is the third highest grossing film of all time. Nobody knows how many people have seen Star Wars, but given box office sales and home rentals, streaming platforms, global broadcasting, it's estimated that about 1 billion people have seen a Star Wars movie. Across the 9 films and various series, it covers issues such as slavery, racism, sexism, war, death, betrayal, and to many, it's an escape form. But whilst I may love Star Wars, I appreciate that not everybody does. This series is not going to be based on Star Wars. Star Wars is just the springboard we're going to use, or the lens that we can see the scripture in. The scripture is the focus, not the Star Wars. And if you have never seen Star Wars before, don't worry. We'll be referencing it as the starter and then going into the scripture that we can see in it. I think it's important to use contextual links to see scripture or metaphors to help understand scripture better. When we think about Christ and the teachings that he did, he would use examples that people knew in their real day lives. He would use fishermen and shepherds. Given an estimated 1 billion people have seen Star Wars, I would say it can be helpful as an example for which we can see scripture. So Episode 1. Episode 1 was released in the 90s. It's commonly seen as one of the worst Star Wars films out there, with terrible dialogue, but that doesn't matter, we can still see some scripture in it. It's based on this young boy, Anakin Skywalker, who is a slave in the desert. And he has a lot of similarities, I see, with the Israel that we see in Exodus. Both of them were born in the desert. Both of them were born into slavery. They're both considered as chosen. Anakin's the chosen one, and the Israelites are the chosen people. Both were freed by the end of their relative book or film, and they were both led by a powerful figure with a connection to a higher power. As some of you may know, in Star Wars there is this thing called the Force. It's a bit of an unexplained mystery. And I'd like to say that whilst God and the Force have some similarities, they are still very different. I'll be referring to the Force and God a lot because of some similarities they have, but I'd like to point out they are not the same. God is so much bigger and greater than the Force. God has authority, whereas the Force doesn't. God cannot be bent by human will, the Force can. God is much greater than the Force. But the similarities they do have are that in their own world, they are the highest power. They are both powerful, they are both mysterious. Both God and the Force have their own will, and they are both higher than mankind. Again, similarities, but God is greater. Anakin and Israel have a lot of similarities. Like I said before about the desert, the chosen, their character, but also their reaction to change. Both Anakin and Israel are freed, but even after they have their freedom, their reaction is somewhat strange. Anakin says 2 things when he's told about his freedom. He says, "I don't want things to change. I just can't do it." With the Israelites, after the manna and quail, they say, "Oh God, you've left us here to starve. Why did you take us out of Egypt? Were there not enough graves there?" Both of them, after their freedom, they're scared of change, they want to go back. That seems odd to us. A quote from Exodus. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us here to die?" Moses replied, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Israel, when they were scared of the change, had someone to spur them on, someone to encourage them. In the same way, Anakin, when he was scared of leaving, had his mother saying, "Be brave and don't look back." Anakin and Israel were both born slaves. Anakin and Israel were both freed. Anakin and Israel both needed a comforter to spur them on. I wonder, do we show any similarities? Is there something that we are afraid of stopping us moving? For Anakin, it was scare of change, fear of change. For Israel, the same. Is there something we cling on to that we are imprisoned by? Something not good for us? Like Israel and Anakin, are we scared of leaving our slavery? We're scared of leaving the thing that is destructive for us because it's all we've ever known. Both Anakin and Israel had a force working for them. We have God. Anakin had to be pushed to leave his slavery, and he was supported by the force. Israel had to be pushed to leave their slavery, and they were supported by God. We may need a push, but we have a God to support us. And in the way that Anakin and Israel had a comforter to spur them on, we have a comforter in God. The God who freed the Israelites is the same God that loves each of us. Let's let that be an encouragement today. That even though we might need a push to get things moving, to break a destructive habit, I know I've needed a push to break some of my destructive habits. Let's be encouraged that there is a God out there who knows us, loves us, supports us, and wants to set us free. See you guys tomorrow.